Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Watchlist. Basically, think of this as like a monthly TV guide for me to let you know what and when TV shows that I'm interested in, that maybe you're interested in, are coming. Like always, in the description down below, I'll include any links to any trailers that might be available about anything that I bring up during this watch list. First up on the list, on January 1st, we had the season/series 12 premiere of Doctor Who, which I'm very excited about. I've only seen one of the trailers that was out there. I think it was like the date announcement video. Obviously, didn't give away too much information to what the trailer I ended up seeing, which is kind of very like, obviously a lot of like, you know, the Doctor and her companion, obviously on adventures, kind of a lot of stuff out of context, but it does seem like the overarching story, it seems like we might be getting this season, is that the Doctor's basically like something or someone is after her, and obviously trying to figure out, you know, probably like figuring out what that is, but also, you know, just shenanigans with, you know, Yaz, Ryan, and Graham, you know, so continuing to see them grow as this, you know, family essentially, you know, so I think that's gonna be pretty dope. And like I said, also figuring out who it is that's after the Doctor. Something that should be kept in mind though is the series is premiering on January 1st, which is a Wednesday, but subsequently the show will be airing on Sundays after that, starting on January 5th, which that's the following Sunday after it premieres on, you know, the 1st. So do keep that in mind. Subsequent episodes will be on Sunday. On January 2nd on Fox, we have a new series called Deputy. It has Stephen Dorff in it. Essentially, the sheriff of this town ends up dying, and now the deputy kind of has to step up and become the new sheriff. He's one of those guys that's kind of like, for what I've got from the little bits I've seen of it, it seems reminds me a little bit of like Longmire. He's kind of very like old school in a way that it's kind of like he has to kind of get adjusted to kind of like the politics of being in the new job that he's in. Because for him, it's just like, I just want to do my job. I didn't get in this for the politics. And it seems like I said, it's kind of like a old school meets new school type of thing of like, oh, he's kind of, like I said, used to things being a very old fashioned way, but now he's got to, you know, it's a very like, it seems like a very interesting crime drama, like, you know, police procedural. So if you're looking for one, that's a new one coming up. On January 6th on NBC, we have season 2 of Manifest. I've not seen any trailers for season 2, but you know, so I have no idea exactly a full scope of what we'll get. But obviously, we're just going to be building off a lot of, I'm assuming, a lot of discoveries we made. Like obviously, Ben and his family made a lot of interesting discoveries, like about like, there's a secret about this whole like, oh, people coming back thing. There's a little bit of a thing they learned near the end of last season. So I'm like, I'm interested to see obviously that carry over, because and that doesn't just apply to Ben and Michaela and Cal, it applies to everyone that was on that flight. Obviously there's still a lot of mystery in that regard, but we still haven't 100% figured out what that all is, Cal's connection to all of that. And what's interesting too is like Michaela's storyline, where that ended on a huge cliffhanger. So to see the continuation of that, you know, without going into spoilers. And obviously, like, who was it that the main antagonist? Wasn't it the Major or was it the General? What that, you know, cause we kind of got our introduction to the character at the end of the season, where it seemed like, oh, she's got her connection to another. It's a whole thing that I'm very interested to kind of see, you know, this mystery kind of, you know, get expanded upon. Like if you haven't watched any Manifest, I highly recommend you check it out. It kind of has very like Lost like feels to it, you know, while still doing its own thing. So I'm very interested to see ultimately what they do with season 2. On January 10th on NBC, we have a new series called Lincoln Rhyme, The Bone Collector. Essentially, there's this cop who is after this well-known serial killer, but in the process, from what I remember reading, like basically he got injured and he's kind of paralyzed. And so now it seems like this particular serial killer has resurfaced and he wants to be there to kind of help, but obviously in this condition he can't. So he kind of calls upon, like, I guess he kind of picks this one particular cop to be like, you're going to be my eyes and ears. She'll have like a little setup that basically lets him see everything that she's seeing. It's kind of like, she's kind of out there doing an investigation and he's kind of like, you know, the man in the chair type of situation of like being kind of the support behind to let her know like, okay, what you like, let me get an eye on everything, and kind of, you know, you're out there on the field, but my mind is behind the scenes kind of telling you what you do. Because it seems like she's kind of, I don't know what her position is, so she seems like she's kind of like the, I don't know if it would necessarily be like rookie cop or whatever, but whatever the case may be, it seems very interesting, especially like considering like it's going to be a show about like one particular serial killer. I think that's going to be interesting. I'm curious to see, are there going to be other cases involved, or is it going to be kind of like The Mentalist, where it's like the whole Red John thing was like the overarching thing, but it did other cases in between? I wonder, is it going to be something like that or not? I would assume so, but you know, ultimately kind of have to wait and see. But the premise seems very interesting, so I'm interested to kind of check that out. On January 12th on HBO, we have a new series called The Outsider. From what I was reading, it's like a mini series. Essentially, it's this very interesting kind of horror-ish crime drama where basically this man kills a child, and obviously it turns into this whole, because it seems like kind of a small town, so like, oh, everyone knows everyone, and it's like people know this guy who killed the child, so it doesn't make any sense because the evidence is kind of like everything points to this dude being the killer, but everything else seems like he almost left evidence so he would get caught. But then the trailer kind of shows that maybe there's some evidence kind of being like, it couldn't have been him because he was in a different location. So it's like, wait, what's going on here? So now it turns into this realm of like, okay, like it's not just a straight up murder mystery that it's solving, then there might be some like supernatural element. There's one cop in particular who's kind of leading everything, who doesn't believe in like there being some supernatural element to it. It's like, no, I'm gonna handle this like with some rationale, because there's another cop who's a little more open to the possibility of there being something more supernatural. It seems like a very interesting premise. I'm not really 100% sure what to expect. It is based on a Stephen King novel of the same name, so that's pretty interesting. As you know, I'm not a big reader, so I've never read any of Stephen King's books. So my only interaction with any of his things has ever been like movies or TV shows, essentially. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of, you know, dive into this story. I'm always in for like a kind of bit of a murder mystery, but especially because it seems like this one has an interesting twist to it, you know. So on January 14th on the CW, we have the conclusion to the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, and I'm so excited. Obviously, part 4 and part 5 are going to be airing on the, you know, on that very night. Part 4 being Arrow, and part 5 being DC's Legends of Tomorrow. So obviously, you know, if you're not caught up with the crossover, some crazy stuff went down all throughout, but definitely part 3 ended on a whoa. So it's kind of interesting to think of that as like parts 1, 2, and 3 being one part, and then part 4 and 5 being the second part. So it's like we're getting kind of almost like the second half of the crossover. It's going to be interesting to see where this all ends up taking us, because obviously like this is going to have, like I said, massive implications for what it means for the Arrowverse, literally all of these shows going forward in the grand scheme of things. So I think that's very fascinating. I'm so excited to see, you know, where that all ends up taking us. And on January 15th, we have the season 5 premiere of The Magicians, which I'm so excited to have The Magicians back. I have avoided all trailers, so I have no idea what to 100% expect in this season, but obviously we're building off of the craziness that was the season 4 finale. Obviously, if you're not caught up, I won't go into specifics, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see how Magicians handles this shift going forward, especially what it means for a lot of the characters, because obviously this big thing that happened last season affected everyone. Obviously, the big 2 people it probably affected the most likely was Alice and Julia, and seeing where they go, especially Julia, because I think, you know, what it means for her character, like just kind of stepping, you know, she's already been a hero, but I think she's going to be stepping more forefront in that regard. So I'm interested to see, you know, where her and Alice's story takes them. Also, you can't forget about Margot and Elliot, because obviously it's like every season they turn around, they're trying to reclaim, you know, their kingdom, you know, and Fillory and everything, because every time you turn around it's like, yeah, that always gets more and more complicated. Season 4's finale made that like threw a wrench in that, making it even more complicated. So just from the little bit I've seen, which is just kind of little you know, TV spot commercials on Sci-Fi, I haven't seen the actual full-blown trailer. I've decided at this point, I was like, no, it's been too long, and I just want to go into this not knowing as much. So I'm very excited to see what kind of shenanigans our heroes get into, because like there's a lot of stuff that was kind of resolved, but obviously they did leave plenty enough open to be like, oh no, there's still plenty of room. There's also the whole like Josh and Margot thing, which is like, yo, like obviously the whole Josh and Margot thing led to an interesting development for Margot's character, so I'm sure that's going to be something she's definitely dealing with next, this season. So that's definitely going to be interesting. On January 21st, I figured I'd go ahead and add this and say that we're technically getting the Legends of Tomorrow season 5 premiere. The reason why I say technically, because obviously, you know, with the crossovers are actually, even though they special one-off events, there's still episodes within each respective show. So technically part 5, the conclusion of the Crisis on Infinite Earths event is technically it's actually the first episode of season 5 of Legends, but on the 21st is going to be the actual premiere of like the season to a certain extent. It's a technicality, but you know, I figured I'd go ahead and kind of throw it in there. Obviously, because the Crisis event isn't over, it probably won't be until after that we see a trailer of, you know, Legends, because obviously the big thing going forward will be like, okay, like obviously once again, like what kind of effect the Crisis event is going to have on, you know, the Arrowverse and all these different shows. So that's definitely going to be interesting. But I'm super excited to see, you know, Legends back and seeing, like, you know, once again, much like I said about Little Magicians, what shenanigans the Legends get into this season. Because season 4 ended off with some notes of like, oh, there was a big shift in that, and I was kind of saddened by this thing. But I'm like, what is that change going to mean long term? Like, you know, it actually kind of ended on a bit of a like sour, like in a bittersweet note is what I'm trying to say. Like, oh, the day was saved and everything, but like I said, there was a complication. So I'm interested to see what becomes of that complication. And finally on my list, on January 24th, we have Chilling Adventures of Sabrina Part 3, or Season 3, whichever one you want to refer to it as, which I'm very excited about, obviously on Netflix. I'm not 100% sure what to really expect, because at the time we were recording this, the only thing that's come out was the date announcement video. It's probably not going to be until like a week or two from now when the actual trailer comes out. But obviously, things were pretty conclusive at the end of Part 2. Obviously, there's like one overarching storyline that's like, oh yeah, let's deal with that going forward, you know, what that means for Sabrina's story. But I'm also curious, like, her friends are kind of by her side, where they're a little divided last season. Like, obviously, stuff from season 1 to season 2 kind of led to some division, but obviously, like, it's like, hey, we're a team, and what that looks like going forward, I think is going to be an interesting dynamic. But obviously, like, also, like, what this adventure means for them, like, you know, all I'll say is the stuff related to Nick, like what that means going forward for their group, because every other storyline seems like it's closed. I am curious, is there going to be any background to her parents? Because I know someone who has read the comic book had hit me up to basically let me know, like, there's stuff about a lot more about her parents in the comic book. So I'm curious, is that going to be something they tackle? Because it's always been kind of a background thing, a little here and there, but I'm curious, is maybe going forward that might be a bigger thing. Maybe not. We'll ultimately kind of have to wait and see, but I'm very excited to see what Part 3 has in store for us. And so that brings this month's watch list to an end. Like always, if there's something that's coming out that maybe you're aware of, that maybe I wasn't aware of, you think me or someone else would be interested in, don't be afraid to leave it in the comments down below. Really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.